In today's world, relationships are evolving faster than ever before. Once upon a time, roles in love were clear. Not necessarily fair, but clear. Men led, women followed. Men provided, women nurtured. That's not the world we live in anymore. Today we witness something revolutionary. Two powerful, ambitious, high-status individuals, men and women, trying to love each other while staying true to their own identities. And that is where the clash begins. High-status men and women often enter relationships with an incredible amount of ambition, confidence, and vision. They are usually driven by a deep sense of purpose and self-respect. However, when two people hold power, leadership, and independence as their highest values, they often default to control rather than connection. Both want to lead, shape decisions, and make their voice heard. Instead of working together, they unintentionally create tension. The clash is not about love missing, it's about power overshadowing presence. The key is learning when to lead, when to listen, and when to simply be present. That's the real balance. In many modern relationships, one partner might aim to take charge as a form of protection, while the other sees it as domination. High-status men typically equate leadership with care, but women often feel it as dismissal of their emotional needs. Meanwhile, high-status women assert their independence to feel secure, but men sometimes interpret that as disrespect or competition. This dynamic turns what could be complementary strengths into areas of conflict. Real presence means knowing when to step back and understand, not just act. Presence builds trust. Power without presence breaks it. The biggest issue arises when presence is replaced by pressure. A man who is constantly focused on leading every situation can make the woman feel like there's no room for her emotions or choices. Similarly, a woman who insists on always being in control may unintentionally rob a man of the space he needs to express his masculine nature. Power without emotional intelligence becomes a weapon. Presence, on the other hand, makes space for both people to exist fully. Without presence, even love feels like a battlefield. They forget they're on the same team. High-status individuals are so used to solving external problems that they forget relationships require internal reflection. They're excellent at tackling business goals and projects, but uncomfortable with emotional vulnerability. Instead of saying, "I feel hurt," they say, "You're overreacting," or "You need to toughen up." Power becomes a shield to avoid feeling weak, but presence demands opening up emotionally. This is where real power lies, not in control but in connection. When both learn this, the relationship shifts from tension to trust. Emotional honesty becomes their strength. These clashes are not because men and women are too strong, but because they haven't learned how to channel that strength in love. Strength without softness becomes stubbornness. Leadership without listening becomes dictatorship. High-status men and women must develop emotional awareness to truly connect. This means making time to understand what the other person values, not just assert their own. True presence isn't just physical, it's emotional availability, patience, and empathy. When couples practice this, power becomes an advantage, not an obstacle. Their strength starts to work together, not against each other. Many men who are used to earning respect through achievement struggle to understand when their presence is needed more than their power. A woman may not need a solution. She may simply need to feel seen, heard, and understood. Likewise, many women who are used to leading in their careers may struggle to let go in a relationship and allow a man to fulfill his role. When both understand that power can be shared, not feared, love becomes easier. Presence is the invisible glue that keeps two powerful people connected. Without it, power only divides. Compromise isn't about losing your power, it's about using it wisely. For high-status men and women, compromise often feels like weakness. They're trained to fight for their ideas, stand their ground, and never give up. But in love, flexibility is a strength. Learning when to step back doesn't weaken your identity, it deepens your connection. When both partners value presence over control, they stop fighting to be right and start working to be understood. Power used with presence becomes healing. It becomes a force that protects the relationship instead of threatening it. Loving another powerful person requires maturity. You don't just love their strengths, you accept their flaws and support them where they're most vulnerable. A high-status man who truly understands presence knows when to let down his guard and simply feel. A high-status woman who understands presence knows when she can lean into softness without losing her independence. This is where real intimacy lives. It's not created through control or dominance, but through emotional availability. When presence leads and power supports, relationships thrive and both feel valued. In conclusion, the clash between high-status men and women isn't about being too strong, it's about not knowing how to soften. Power and presence don't cancel each other out, they complement each other beautifully when used correctly. A powerful relationship isn't one where one person wins, it's where both feel seen, respected, and deeply understood. When men learn to lead with emotional intelligence and women learn to trust without fear, the clash turns into harmony. True love doesn't require less power, just more presence. That's the balance that makes modern relationships truly extraordinary. Ego and vulnerability are two forces that constantly collide in high-status relationships. On one hand, ego pushes individuals to maintain control, to appear strong, and to avoid showing any signs of emotional weakness. On the other hand, vulnerability demands openness and honesty, even when it feels uncomfortable. High-status men and women often avoid vulnerability because they have built their identities around strength, independence, and success. But relationships are not sustained by ego, they are nourished by emotional transparency and connection. When ego leads every interaction, intimacy fades. Vulnerability is not weakness, it is the doorway to real love, and that must be understood. In relationships, high-status men especially fear vulnerability because they associate it with loss of respect. They believe that if they expose their emotions, they will be seen as weak or less masculine. They learn to hide pain under silence, anger, or jokes. But what they do not realize is that withholding emotions creates distance. A woman does not lose respect when a man opens up, she actually trusts him more. Vulnerability is a strength because it shows emotional depth. When a man expresses how he feels, he is not breaking his power, he is deepening the connection. That is true leadership. Similarly, high-status women also struggle with vulnerability because they often equate it with losing independence. Many have had to fight for their voice, their place, and their space in a world that wasn't always welcoming. So they protect themselves with emotional walls. They want to love but fear giving too much because they've been taught that vulnerability leads to hurt. But withholding feelings is not the same as protecting oneself. It blocks intimacy and creates emotional loneliness. True strength for a woman is not just independence, it is the ability to feel deeply without fear. Vulnerability doesn't weaken her, it strengthens love. The irony is that both high-status men and women want emotional connection, yet their fear of vulnerability resists it. They may crave closeness but avoid expressing their needs. They pretend not to care to avoid appearing needy. They wait for the other person to open up first. But love cannot grow where vulnerability is absent. Emotional armor might keep pain away, but it also keeps love away. Real intimacy requires allowing yourself to be seen, not just your success, but your fears, your dreams, and your heart. That is how powerful relationships are built, not through perfection, but through emotional honesty. Ego wants to protect, but vulnerability wants to connect. The problem is that ego often wins because it is quicker, louder, and easier. Ego says, don't apologize first, don't let them know how much you care, or don't act too invested. But vulnerability says, speak your truth, show that you care, and take the risk. High-status relationships break not because love is missing, but because vulnerability is. To love deeply is to take the risk of being hurt, and that's the price of real human connection. Ego might keep you safe, but vulnerability makes you alive. Love demands aliveness, not defensiveness. In relationships where ego is in control, communication often becomes defensive, passive-aggressive, or emotionally cold. Instead of expressing hurt, a person might criticize. Instead of saying, I miss you, they become distant. Ego turns every emotional moment into a battle instead of a bridge. But when vulnerability takes the lead, communication becomes clear, sincere, and healing. Instead of pointing fingers, partners share their feelings openly. They stop trying to win arguments and start trying to win each other back. Vulnerability turns conflict into understanding. It turns disconnection into deeper intimacy. That is where love thrives, not in ego, but in openness. Many high-status individuals have been conditioned to believe that they must always be strong, stoic, and untouched, so they suppress their emotions instead of expressing them. But suppressed emotions don't disappear. They explode later or turn into resentment. Emotional honesty is not about oversharing. It's about being honest with yourself and your partner. Vulnerability requires balance, not dumping emotions carelessly, but expressing them mindfully. When both partners can share how they feel without fear of judgment, the relationship becomes psychologically safe. Safe love is strong love. Only vulnerability creates that safety. Ego can't. It destroys it over time. A truly powerful relationship is one where both partners feel free to express their truest selves. There is no need to perform, to impress, or to prove themselves. They know they can break down without being broken. They can reveal their fears without being abandoned. Vulnerability creates emotional intimacy, and emotional intimacy creates unbreakable bonds. This is not the love of weak people. It is the love of emotionally courageous people, those who risk being seen completely. That is the kind of love high-status people have to learn. Not perfect love, but honest love. In conclusion, the clash between ego and vulnerability in high-status relationships is the real reason many powerful couples fail. They are strong in the world, but afraid to be soft in love. They think vulnerability makes them weak, when in reality, it makes their love stronger. Ego protects your pride. Vulnerability protects your connection. When high-status men and women learn that emotional openness does not reduce their power but multiplies it, love becomes a source of healing and growth. The strongest relationships are not those without fear, but those where vulnerability is chosen despite it. That is real strength. Masculine and feminine energies are the invisible forces that shape our romantic relationships. Regardless of gender, everyone carries both energies, but in different proportions. The masculine seeks purpose, direction, and logical structure, while the feminine seeks connection, flow, and emotional depth. When these energies are aligned, relationships feel effortless and natural. But for high-status men and women, these energies often become misaligned due to societal pressure, ego, and fear. A woman may suppress her feminine to compete, and a man may avoid his masculine to avoid conflict. Misaligned energies create emotional chaos. Alignment creates love. Balance is everything. In high-status relationships, women often adopt dominant masculine traits to succeed in their careers. Independence, assertiveness, and control become survival tools. While these traits serve her in business, they may sabotage her in love. When she brings a rigid masculine energy into the relationship, it clashes with the man's natural masculine core. He may feel challenged, unneeded, or emasculated. Rather than feeling safe, he feels tested. The problem isn't her strength, it's the lack of flow. Femininity isn't about weakness, it's about emotional intelligence, receptivity, and intuitive strength. That is her power, not her apology. Similarly, many high-status men have abandoned their natural masculine energy due to social conditioning or personal insecurity. They may become passive, emotionally disconnected, or afraid to lead. They avoid confrontation to keep peace, but in doing so, they lose their presence. A woman cannot trust a man who won't lead, decide, or stand firm. Masculinity is not aggression, it is direction, purpose, and stability. When a man leaves his masculine core, the woman is forced into a role she never wanted. The polarization breaks, power becomes static. Masculinity is needed, not for control, but for protection. When both partners live in their masculine energy, the relationship becomes a war of dominance. There is no flow, no softness, and no attraction. Likewise, when both stay in the feminine, the relationship becomes stagnant. Filled with emotion but no direction, polarity is the fundamental principle of attraction. You need opposite energies to create passion. The masculine provides structure, the feminine provides life. Without this dance, love feels heavy, forced, and exhausting. It's not about gender roles, it's about energetic harmony. When polarity is lost, attraction fades. When polarity is restored, desire returns. Energy creates chemistry. One of the biggest myths in modern love is that equality means sameness, but equality in power doesn't require identical energy expression. Men and women can be equal and still different. In fact, their differences are what create attraction and complementarity. A high-status woman can embrace her feminine without losing her leadership. A high-status man can embrace his masculine without becoming controlling. Equality respects both energies. Alignment brings them together. The best relationships are not 50-50, they are 100-100, with each person offering the energy that keeps the relationship alive. Differences are not the enemy, they are the spark. When masculine and feminine energies are misaligned, resentment grows. A man resents feeling replaced, and a woman resents having to carry the emotional and directional load. Misalignment creates emotional burnout. But when both are aligned, there is effortlessness. The man's strength creates space for her softness, and her softness inspires his strength. The feminine draws depth from the masculine, and the masculine draws purpose from the feminine. They are not competing, they are completing. That is the secret of polarity. It is not about roles, it is about energy balance. Alignment leads to admiration, misalignment leads to exhaustion. Embracing masculine and feminine energies requires deep self-awareness, not performance. A woman must feel safe enough to relax into her femininity. A man must feel respected enough to activate his masculinity. Safety and respect are the foundation of polarity. Without respect, a man shuts down. Without safety, a woman hardens. The relationship becomes heavy. The solution is not to suppress strength, but to redirect energy. Healthy masculinity leads with confidence, not control. Healthy femininity leads with sensitivity, not submission. True energy alignment is freedom. It gives both partners permission to be fully themselves without fear. A powerful woman can still be deeply feminine, and a powerful man can still be deeply masculine. Power does not kill attraction. Misuse of power does. When high-status men and women understand their own energies, they stop blaming each other and start healing themselves. They stop trying to change each other and start inspiring one another. Emotional magnetism returns when energy is aligned. Masculine presence brings depth, and feminine softness brings life. This balance turns a relationship from a battlefield into a sanctuary. Opposites attract for a reason, not to limit but to elevate. Polarity isn't old-fashioned, it's human nature. In conclusion, the clash in modern relationships is not just about personality differences. It's about energetic misalignment. Masculine and feminine energies must be recognized, valued, and honored for love to flow effortlessly. Two powerful people can love each other deeply when they learn to balance, not battle, their energies. Masculinity without aggression and femininity without fragility create harmony. Love needs polarity to stay alive. When high-status men and women lead with awareness instead of ego and energy instead of force, relationships transform. Misalignment ends, connection begins, and the love they once struggled for flows naturally. That is the true dance of energy. In modern relationships, many high-status men and women approach love with a competitive mindset instead of a collaborative one. They treat the relationship like a scoreboard, tallying who does more, who tries harder, and who cares less. This competition slowly drains emotional intimacy. Instead of building a connection, they build walls. Both partners begin to protect themselves rather than support each other. Love becomes a negotiation rather than a gift. But real connection is not about keeping score. It's about keeping love alive. Two powerful individuals must remember that they are on the same team, not in opposing camps. One of the biggest reasons powerful people struggle in love is because they have been conditioned to succeed by competing. In their careers, they are rewarded for dominance, negotiation, and leverage. But that mindset does not translate into romance. You cannot outwork or outmaneuver love. You must nurture it. While competition inspires excellence, it also builds emotional distance. A relationship is not supposed to feel like an office or a courtroom. It is supposed to feel like home. When partners compete instead of connect, they forget the purpose of being together: emotional support, companionship, healing, and growth. In many high-status relationships, one partner may subconsciously try to outdo the other. More success, more attention, more emotional control. They believe that being right gives them leverage, but being right becomes meaningless when the relationship itself is wrong. One person may bring up past failures during arguments to win points. The other may withhold affection to gain emotional power. These tactics may feel satisfying in the moment, but they destroy long-term trust. Real love doesn't keep score. When both partners always try to win, they end up losing each other. The relationship collapses under ego. Support, not superiority, is the key to true partnership. High-status men and women must learn that emotional success comes from understanding and vulnerability, not dominance. When your partner feels valued, they naturally give more. When they feel challenged or compared, they give less. Successful relationships are built on encouragement and celebration, not silent resentment. When one person wins, both should feel uplifted, not threatened. Love allows room for two different strengths to coexist. The most powerful relationships are those where success is shared, where achievements are celebrated together, and where growth is seen as mutual, not competitive. The shift from competition to companionship requires emotional maturity. It requires recognizing when ego is sabotaging love. Instead of asking who's doing more, ask, are we doing this together? Instead of noticing how much your partner lacks, notice how much they give. Healthy relationships thrive on gratitude, not comparison. In companionship, partners see each other as assets, not obstacles. They build together even when they disagree. They argue to understand, not to defeat. True partnership is spiritual. It transforms two individuals into a united force. Competition destroys unity. Companionship creates it. That is the difference between love and power struggle. Many high-status individuals carry emotional wounds from past relationships, betrayals, or lack of support. These wounds often turn into defensiveness. They enter love guarded, ready to protect instead of connect. But love cannot coexist with fear. If one or both partners are always afraid of being hurt, they begin to fight out of self-defense instead of compassion. They interpret everything as competition, even love itself. Healing requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires trust. Companionship begins when both people realize they are not fighting each other, they are fighting for each other. That shift changes everything. This competitive mindset also shows up in emotional withholding. One partner might withhold affection, love, sex, or approval to gain power or prove a point. They might intentionally delay forgiveness or continue keeping emotional distance to stay in control. But withholding is not strength. It is fear disguised as strategy. Companionship gives without condition, not because one partner is perfect, but because love is worth protecting. When the bond matters more than the ego, emotional generosity becomes natural. The heart softens. And love begins to repair what competition has broken. Connection grows in honesty, not manipulation. The most successful relationships treat love like a collaboration. They understand that partnership is not 50-50. It's 100-100. It's two people giving their all, not half of themselves. They don't wait for the other to change first. They lead through example. They speak kindly even when emotions are high. They apologize quickly and forgive genuinely. They understand that companionship is a choice, not a circumstance. In a competitive relationship, the goal is to win. In a companionate relationship, the goal is to grow. These are the relationships that stand the test of time. They feel safe, uplifting, and deeply fulfilling. In conclusion, high-status men and women must understand that love is not a contest. It is a shared journey. Relationships thrive when partners see each other as allies, not adversaries. Competition may bring success in the external world, but companionship brings peace to the inner world. When two driven, powerful people learn to build together instead of battle each other, love becomes their strength, not their weakness. The deepest relationships are not those without conflict, but those without competition. When the relationship comes before the ego, love flourishes. Companionship wins where competition fails. That is the true purpose of partnership.